Okay, welcome back. I am making a press brake from scrap metal. This is a piece of 6" by 1/4 I had, and I probably cut it too short initially, but I'm going on instinct here. I did do a wooden model with hot glue just to get some bearings, but it didn't answer all my questions. Now working in metal, knowing that I could make some real solid joints, I changed up the design slightly, but I'm just freestyling it. I'm making it up as I go. That's 2" by 3/8 that I got at Home Depot. They were 36 inches long, and I cut up a couple of the pieces, and one I leave fully 36 inches long. That's what I'm going to make the lever of the handle. Now I'm working with scraps and some new metal here, and press brakes, there's a lot of videos online of press brakes, but people make them for pressing big heavy metal with a hydraulic jack. What I would find more useful is making a press brake that I could use on my desktop or on my workbench, and that's what I'm making here. This T-track, by the way, was bolted to the bottom of an old bowling alley that I got, and that's what that T-track is there. And I cut it in half, and I'm making 2 very sturdy uprights, and I'm leaving a gap in the bottom. That's why I ended up using the 3/8 to kind of create an open gap at the bottom of this channel, because I knew I needed some space to make a connection down there, and you'll see in just a minute what I'm doing. So I'm using some 2" by 3/16 and some 2" by 3/8 and some 1/4", just all scraps. And I'm kind of freestyling this one because I know it's a fairly simple build, and I'll make this, I'll learn what I need to learn from it, and then if I wanted to, I could make it again. Again, not a very complicated build. This took me just a few hours on an afternoon to get this start to finish. This is probably a 2-hour build. And here I am just thinking, I know what I got to do. That's going to be the rod that goes up and down and carries the, I guess, the prong of the brake. And now I need a pivot. So this is just 2" angle iron I had from a build I did a few months ago. And that's, by the way, that's my bandsaw stand that I built for a Linc video last summer, and it still holds up. And now here I'm drilling a pivot point, basically. That's a 1/2 inch. And this is going to be the back of my pivot. Just tacking things right away. I do drive a lot of these welds home off camera because tacking them as I go. I'm not 100% sure where, what, when. Just feeling it out slowly. And putting that pivot point in right there. I'm sure I'm popping my P's on this recording. I'm sorry. And now I know that's the back. I'm being slightly cautious with trapping this upright because once I trap it in, I'm not going to have any nuts and bolts on this thing. It's all going to get welded shut. So now I have a channel, my upright, my piston you might want to call it. And now to get holes drilled precisely in a shop environment without a machine shop, I just weld 2 pieces of metal together. I'm going to basically make a link that carries the upright, or the piston I should call it maybe, and the lever. So I'm connecting the piston to the lever. And this is 2 pieces of that 3/8 by 2. And I just went at a diagonal because I was about to drill them side by side. I realized it's probably too close together. And utilizing the piece I had, if I drill them at each corner, it gives me a little bit more room to spread them apart. And that's the bottom of my piston, and this is the side of my lever. And I get stuck, and the drill bit gets stuck, and the belt is spinning, and I break it off. And there you go. And I have this stainless rod, and that's what I end up using for pins. There you go. Just cutting apart my weld. Again, that's that bandsaw that I worked on previously, and I use it probably 20 times a day. And here I am just cutting some steel rod. That's a stainless steel rod. I figured I'd use stainless because it's going to be super strong. And now I'm creating my Linc, and there it is. And I tack it in place, kind of anticipating that I might have to take it apart, but I never did have to take it apart. And there you go. So now that's together forever. And you see here, I'm just brainstorming as I go, problem solving on the ride. My pin is in the back, my piston, my lever, Everything seems pretty good. And so I think what I'm making now is my blade, the upper blade for my bender. And instead of machining it, I just had this little angle, this 1/2 inch angle with a sharp edge. I just welded it in place, and that becomes the press inside of my brake. So again, just trying to work with what's around instead of running over to the Bridgeport, which is in another location. And I ground a big bevel there so that I have a nice deep welding area for the bead. And I flatten the bead out a little bit, and you'll notice I make a channel in the uprights. And there I flatten it a little bit. I don't want to get rid of it totally. And now you see right there, it's rubbing a little bit, and so I think, yep, there it is. I grind it a little bit, give it some room so that the weld that's still left has room to live inside there. And now I'm making the bottom of the brake, I guess the receding part. And just this heavy duty metal is just, you can't go wrong. You know it's going to work. Bolting it in place, and I don't have too much travel, but I don't need too much travel. I'm not going to bend anything thicker than probably 16 gauge in this. I mean, I am going to bend an 1/8, but the 1/8 won't be a big profile. And there we go. I'm just keep checking and checking. And now again, to go into the crotch of an angle, I could have taken it to the machine shop and made a sharp corner, or I could just use these 2 1/4 inch by 1, and now I have a sharp corner down in the bottom there. And then I tack weld this in place in case I ever want to change those blades. I could just grind off those tacks and pull that blade out. And so there you go. I got a sharp outside edge and a sharp inside corner, just with scrap laying around. Didn't have to go to the machine shop. I drive that home real nice and strong, and now I'm essentially got the basics down, and I just do a quick test. It is bolted to the table, clamped I should say. There you go, that worked really good. And you see right here I tested out on the outside edge, and there's a lot of flex. I took a minute to utilize this opportunity right there to make a little tiny bender area, and when I realized I opened it up, it really wasn't enough clearance to get a rod in there, so I had to cut the top of these off, which didn't really matter anyway. It seems to work pretty well. And so just me just testing it as I go. That little area there works great. You can see it's really concentrated force right there. And so now I'm just enclosing. I'm trusting that decision I've made till now is good. Now that piston rod is completely enclosed, and this is just to give it a little bit more strength. It wasn't until after I tested it a few times that I realized I kind of blew my clearance underneath that. I could have made a little bit more of a shallow gusset there, which I could always change it later. And here now I'm making the spring return. I was playing with it a little bit, and I realized I needed some return because it always stays shut. It doesn't live in the open position. So I took the opportunity to try and put this heavy-duty spring I had in my junk drawer right here. And just fiddling around and tinkering, I realized all these various parts fit together well. This spring fits right over that 1/2 by 1/2 rod, and there you go. Everything works together, and this 3/4 tube fits right over everything. And given the opportunity, I did cut and weld this on and off a couple times so I got the right tension. So there you can see it's much more compressed than the previous shot, but the tension now is right, and it holds that 3-foot long handle up in the air. And again, I could have made that quarter plate longer. I wasn't really thinking, just freestyling, so I needed to put a footing in the back there. And there I go. I'm basically done. I have my mounting holes in the front and in the back, and there you go. There it is, and I'm painting it Linc red just so it looks better on camera. And that 2-inch rod, the lever, is straight out of Home Depot, just like that. And there we go. I'm just showing you a test on how to make a loop. I put a little stopper block in there just so I don't end up making any inconsistent bends, and just freestyling out of a piece of 1/4 by, I think it's a 1/2 by 1/8 from McMaster car. I bought a bunch of them, and my assistant Brandon there is just TIG welding it together. Just do a little jump shear, playing around. That's just cold bend right there, 16 gauge. Making a little box enclosure, and now this is 1/8 inch. I had to heat bend it. 1/8 inch definitely is a little thick for that, so that's a 3-inch by 1/8. And just showing you, this is my K-tail moment, showing you how we could do these and do with what we can do. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something, and I would love to see your take on this if anybody wanted to make one.